Hi, everybody. Welcome to Live at the Lab. We have the production team for Mamma Mia here right now. They are currently over here. You don't see them yet because I've got them. They're in my clutches. And we're going to ask them some questions today. Hopefully learn something about the tech side of theater and or more production side of theater because we do have choreography and music here with us. And directing, directing encompasses it all, right? So we've got production team for all them. What we're going to do is we've got some set questions or standard questions or default questions that I've got made up kind of pertaining to their background and how they got there that we're going to ask first, and then we're going to discuss Mamma Mia, and then after the fact, we'll do some Q&A if we get some questions. So get yourself into the YouTube chat, get yourself in there, find the way to the chat, and ask some questions as to why, for, where on what they've decided for this show. Mamma Mia will be happening in the future. You can see it behind me. It's all right here, and the costumes are, I don't know, wherever they put costumes. But they've got a lot of work done on all of that, so we want to make sure it's happening, and I think a lot of you probably in here are cast members that have said yes, they want to come back, so thank you, and we're excited to be able to do the show for you and keep that moving. Let's bring out all the people. I'll do some promos first, and then we'll bring out everybody, and that way I don't have to pop back and forth. We're going to be celebrating the National Volunteer Week and have a we'll have Dennis wants to say thank you to those who have founded Great. And so that will be something we're doing coming up here. So keep your eyes out for that. We have a group e-cabaret. So those of you who are here, all 30 of you, are going to hear it first. That will be airing on May 15th. And that's going to be 3 or more people. So I know some people have been doing solos, or there's even been some duets. But we want to make sure it gets into groups. So find ways to choose amongst yourselves how to do a video with multiple people without getting 6 feet close to each other. So it's either make video singing the same song together, or video it, edit it, and send it to us. If you want to do the editing, awesome. But otherwise, that's going to be airing May 15th. We need the entries done by Sunday, May 10th, please. We're going to have a flash fundraiser next week. 1 day, 24 hours. Every donation will be matched dollar for dollar, up to $10,000 next week, Tuesday. Thanks to the founding members, Paul and Joanne Dorsher. Thank you. Tuesday, April 28th. Please give online at greattheater.org. We hope that you will consider making a gift for today's needs and tomorrow's dreams. Your support will ensure we can serve our community now and for generations to come. So help us, please get that matching funds. So thank you. Next Tuesday, April 28th, which I believe is next week Friday, or no, on Tuesday, sorry, we are going to stream the Peter Pan that we did. So Amy was in it, who you'll see shortly, who we all know, and many of you other people. And we did Peter Pan a few years ago. It was written by Scott. Anyway, let me read the words that they told me to read here. Peter Pan Live streaming Tuesday, April 28th, 7 p.m. We were going to stream the entire thing in its whole thing it was done at St. Ben's, the full-length 2014 production of Peter Pan, performed at the Fine Arts Programming at CSB SJU. We have received special permission to share this secret vaulted recording. It's very Disney. Written by local artists who are delighted to have permission to show our original work for a limited time online. So that's going to be Tuesday, the 28th at 7 p.m. Watch some Peter Pan done by your local peeps. Yeah, so that's fun. And now, without further ado, we are going to bring in everybody. Yay! That's you guys. Yay! Hi. We have Amy Myron, the director. We have Amanda Kivel, stage manager. We have Robert Kovach, set design. We have Aaron Porter, lighting design. We have Desiree Clark, choreography. And we have Hillary Vermillion, music. There are other people that were not able to make it here. We've also got Sarah Beth did costumes, and Steve Sanders would be doing sound. So, so those are our or our production people. I think I'd like to then open up to Amy here, and why don't I answer, or I'll tell all the questions. I'll say the questions, and then I won't have to say them every time. We'll tell everybody. I'm gonna have everybody define their position or career. So how do they define what they're doing for us? How did they get started in that position or career? And I say position or career because it's some of them don't necessarily do it professionally, so they're in a and then what was their first success? Not necessarily their first experience. So how would they say this is when I actually had success, not just did a thing? And what's the biggest beginner mistake that can be avoided? And we'll power through all of these, and we'll have some fun. So, Amy, how would you define your position?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Good. Okay. I am Amy Myron. I'm the director. I'm going to try and avoid that patch of sunlight. Sorry. Yeah, now it looks like a halo. Perfect. Okay. I think the position of a director is an enormous cheerleader, a great unifier, a clear storyteller, and a champion, especially in community theater, for all of us, for all of our voices and all of our individuality. That is what I think my role, especially at Great, is. Colin's other question was a question about success. And I think that success is so interesting. Success is a term that is different for each individual. Like right now for me in our house, like success is when I can get my 5th grader to turn in his homework online on the computer on time. Like that's a huge success at our house. For me, success has always been the little things. It's the celebration of a perfect note that is played and timed beautifully to the music, and it's just nailed, and then it's beautiful, and that makes my heart go pitter-pat. Success is also the achievement of a new actor or a returning actor coming back to our stages and making their experience stronger and better with each effort that they make. That is success to me.
Can you remember the first time you ran into that? Where you were like, I succeeded. I made
Yes, let me tell you exactly what it was, Colin, and you're going to love this. This patch of sun, I'm sorry, is interfering. I'll try not to move my head.
No, you're fine.
At holidays, we would gather at my grandmother's house. And the best thing about my grandmother's house when I was growing up is she had this amazing front porch. You know, if you're involved in theater, what you do with a front porch, right? That's your stage right there. All those little cousins, those are your actor minions. Yes. After dinner is over, there's always a downtime with the adults. You can take them and make a play. And that is what we would do growing up all the time. So people ask, like, when did you get started in theater? Like, when forever for me. And I think that's for a lot of us. Like, it layers on. Yeah.
All right. I think, you knocked those out. See, it wasn't going to take you forever. Now, what's your biggest beginner mistake as a cheerleader director?
This is super good. When I was going into college, my undergrad, I did not want to be a director. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on the stage. First semester of my first fall in college, I went and auditioned for the fall show, and it was a serious show. It was a good show. Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus was the show. Super exciting, right? Had not done anything like that in high school. So I didn't get in. First round of auditions, I didn't get in. But the director had put a small note at the bottom of the cast list. You know, your spirit is crushed, right? The director put a small note, and the note said, I have office hours from X to X on such and such a time. And I'm like, all right, so failure is sometimes vulnerability, right? And so you swallow that and you say, I'm going to go to these office hours. And so I went to these office hours and we had a great conversation. And I ended up being invited to be the sound designer for the show and create a whole soundtrack for this amazing production of Dr. Faustus that has informed absolutely every single theater production that I've ever done since. And I think that sometimes our greatest mistakes can turn out to be our greatest like opportunities, our greatest chances to see ourselves in a new light or have a new and widening experience. So there you have
All
it.
right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for directing our show. All right. And Amanda, your turn. How would you define
Right.
your position?
Well, I would have to say that I have a lot of roles that I play in as being a stage manager, but I think kind of the main ones are like cast communication. I go through a ton of emails and schedules and all the conflicts and all that stuff with the cast and making sure that everybody's there and everybody's communicated with between and not just the cast but between all the production team
Yeah.
members as well.
Everybody.
So I think that's huge is to manage all of that communication. I write down the blocking notes and things like that during rehearsals. And one of the other things that I do is I gather a backstage crew of volunteers, and I know we're kind of promoting our volunteers and stuff, and I think that's really important for people to kind of to try it and come out because I am actually looking for volunteers for Mamma Mia's crew. So if anybody that's
Ooh,
listening out
hint,
there
hint.
wants to take part, we can see if we can make that happen. And then I also put together like what's called a call script or a call book. And so throughout the production or throughout the rehearsal process, I put in all of the cues that are needed to make the show come to life on stage. So like the light cues, sound cues, scenery cues, like scene changes, fly loft, any set pieces or actors moving, all of that stuff has to go into one book. And it's all tightly choreographed so that everything happens at the right time during the show. And so then when we get into our tech week, we kind of finalize all of those things. And I put then when the production comes on stage, I call all those cues live. So once that call book is finalized, during the performances, every single movement is called by me. I wear headset and communicate with everybody that's working backstage, and like spotlight operators, all of the people that are working on the show to make it happen live. So once I say go on a certain call, that's when something happens.
You're
And
in
so that's
control.
my position with as being a stage manager for Great. Yeah.
Awesome. How'd you get started? How did we get you?
Well, I was involved in drama when I was in high school, and so I was an actor though, so I didn't really do a lot of backstage things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided I wanted to start volunteering for Great and working backstage because I remembered how much I really liked theater, and so once I did that, it was like I got bit by that theater bug again once I was an adult, and I just kept coming back and volunteering for crew for a bunch of different shows. And I eventually let Dennis know that I was interested in stage managing, and then became the ASM, the assistant stage manager for Mary Poppins, which ended up turning into a stage manager position, which wasn't necessarily planned, but I kind of just jumped in and took the role on, and with the help of an amazing production team, which some of you are here with us on the chat, I learned a whole lot. And as the process went along, I just kind of learned as I went. It was super stressful, but it turned out to be a really wonderful show. So that's how I got started.
I forgot about that. That you jumped in on that. That you okay. Awesome. Well done. All right. So, what was your first success then? You would say.
Well, I mean, looking back, I'd have to say it would have to be Mary Poppins, just because it was something that I never thought I was ready for. I remember sitting in Dennis's office when Amy, Myron, and Dennis were like, okay, we want you to be the stage manager. You can do this. And I was like, I don't know if I can. And they believed in me, and I did it. And I mean, that I would have to say that's a success. I mean, I had no real formal training. And and even in one song, like there's one song in there, there's like an 8-minute song, Step in Time, like a big huge production where we had like 70 some actors on stage tap dancing. I had in that 8-minute long song, I had 108 or about that. My memory might be a little off, but
Was
light
that
cues in
Aaron's
the one
fault?
song that I had to
Was
call.
that Aaron's fault?
Yeah,
No?
well, it,
No?
it
I
might have
think it
been.
might have been. Actually, now that we're talking about it. Okay, well, good. We'll get to him.
But so it was one of those things where I'm like, I was standing and calling him. I had to call him on beats of the music, and like it was crazy. It was super stressful, but very successful in the long run. And I wasn't sure I could do it, so but I did, and everyone said it was a great show, and I'm really proud of that. So
Excellent. Thank you. And what's your beginner mistake?
okay, so I thought about this question, and I wasn't exactly sure what to say, but I would have to say for me, like using pen in your script as a stage manager, because it's whether it's like taking blocking notes or writing down cues or anything like that, like it's a beginner mistake. Things can change as the process moves along, and sometimes only like just a little bit, but if you use pen, you can't change it, you can't move it. And so I like to use, well, it's actually really important for like a stage manager to take accurate notes and all that. So I like to use sticky notes and color coordinate them so I can move them around if I need to. But I know it's like kind of a interesting question, but I think that's like
No,
a
that's
easy
an
beginner
excellent one.
mistake thing that.
Do you get to write that note in pen, though? Like, that one gets to stay, right? We don't have to change that one. So you get to write they don't use pen in pen. And then it's...
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Amanda. Robert.
Yeah.
How would you define set design?
I would say kind of look right behind you. It's a good example. Is start with a blank
I'll
space.
get out of the way.
Start with a blank space, and this is kind of the magic you happen. You basically collaborate with an awesome team and break down the script into its elements, and from there, just we need to locate locations, what's needed from set pieces, furniture to tell the story. You work with the choreographer to figure out like if we're going to stand on things, if we're not, where it's coming from. It's like a lot of math too as well of navigating wings and backstage space. It's just not all about putting a pretty design on stage. It's about making it efficient in the sense of telling the story in a manner and not getting bogged down. And then on top of that, just understanding lighting angles and working with lighting and costume as well. So we have a beautiful set design with lighting and whatnot, and then costumes comes to play on top of that as well, so they don't get faded into the background or anything like that. So that's cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
How did you get started in all of this?
That's funny. I went to my first Marshall University. My first 2 years was marine biologist, right? Crazy, if you can believe that. So hey, I had all my core classes done, right? And then I took a theater tech class, and that was basically it. That's how I got started, because I grew up in a very 300 people in a small town in rural West Virginia. So it was theater was not the thing. It was football, baseball, bringing your rifle or bow and arrow on the bus with the DNR, and you'd go to the football field in the wintertime, and you had to learn how to shoot a bow or a gun so you didn't shoot somebody. I mean, that's kind of like what it was about. But anyway, that's what I did, and that was how I got into the business and loved it since then, and just baby steps from there.
Awesome. What's your first success then? If you came into it
I'd
late?
have to say my first success would be having outside of theater, 2 little kids. Having a 4.5-year-old and
that's cheating.
And,
cheating. Boo.
It is.
I have
I'm
2
sorry,
kids
I'm
too. I
plugging in
love them,
my
but
battery's going dead. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please.
No, that's right. I'm all good now. My father-in-law brought down my charger, so I'm good to go. I'm all hooked up.
Well
I was
done.
at 10% there. I didn't think it was going to drain it. But no, in theater, I'd have to say it was really just meeting great people. In our business, it's really about who you work with and connections along the way. It's the best way I can describe it in the sense of success. And just moving to Chicago, and then when I was at Purdue, getting the chance to design the PML or PMO Christmas show, which is a big 100-foot wide stage, and first student they allowed to do that because of my mentor there, Van Phillips, and then moving to Chicago and getting opportunities and just meeting people. I mean, and just people that were like directors who I've worked with were at the time that were literally in the chorus. That's the best way I can describe it. The next thing I know is they're they're getting a kid show, and the next thing you're doing 4 or 5 kid shows with that person or another person, and they work their way up, and that's, I don't know, it's kind of how it works. And I think that's the biggest success. It's just really just being a people person, and giving everybody an opportunity. It doesn't matter, you could be great at what you do, or you could be okay, but you can be successful if you're a good communicator in that sense. So
Yeah, awesome.
does that help?
It does. I think that's an excellent advice. What's your biggest beginner mistake then? If you're meeting people, you're doing all that stuff. Like, what shouldn't you be doing?
Mine was perfection. I have to say that would be my because it's and because within that you could sit there and you just don't really trust yourself. I mean, knowing the history of what you're doing, the show, the vision that you have, the concepts going forward. If it's if it's a musical theater in a sense of your it's commercialized, so you can do. We could sit here and say we're going to do arts and fartsy stuff, but if artsy fartsy doesn't sell, it doesn't really help us. So, it's about telling that story and making it believable. And I have to say, my thing was just, in that sense of just being a perfectionist. Like, start early on, and you go back and redraw things 50 times rather than saying, no, this is the through line. Like in the background, we're going to do arches, done, live with it, right? That's, nice soft edges for a show. We're going to round those edges, each one of those corners were rounded, which you have there if you look stage right. I mean, that living with that rather than going back and second guessing yourself. So that was, I'd have to say that's mine, is like, you have to realize when to draw the line in the sand and move on to the next part of the show. If not, heck, you and I could sit here on the set, and Amy, if you gave us, a year of tech, we'd sit there and, adjust whatever we needed to, lighting wise, set wise, more props, paint this again, so we just have to learn that opening is opening, and draw that line and go for it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, next is Desiree Clark with choreography. How would you define choreography?
Well, my day job is at St. Cloud State. I'm an affirmative action officer over there, so whole different world. But my undergraduate degree and my passion through most of my life has been in dance. And so moving back to St. Cloud in 2013, I believe it was, my mother was working on The Little Mermaid Junior, and she says, Desiree, come to this audition with me. And then I ended up doing every single rehearsal and helping her choreograph the show, and absolutely loved every moment of it. And then Dennis says, hey, we're doing The Wizard of Oz in January. Would you like to choreograph that show? And I'm like, what, really, me? And I said, sure, why not? And I was working on my graduate degree at the time and had no idea I was going to be doing finals and choreography all at once. And luckily I didn't have any children at the time, but I managed to survive it. So that's kind of how I got involved. And I've just been going ever since. I've gotten reconnected with my passion in life, and that's dance, and being able to teach people and help them grow and be comfortable in themselves and move those bodies. For those of you who know my know my choreography style, move your body. That's our Beyonce warm up. But yeah, I just absolutely love it. I fell in love with theater, which is very different from concert dance. So I love it.
Well, excellent. I didn't know that was how you got started. I thought you were doing it before, but we just grabbed hold of you and said, yes, please. And
yeah,
you made some awesome
stuff.
It was
all by chance.
Cool. That was how you got started. What was your first success then?
So
in dance, right?
My first success, I think I would have to say, was from The Wizard of Oz, the Jitterbug. That was 6 minutes of full choreography.
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious! Probably the most difficult piece of work that I've ever put together. But we survived it, and I just had such a good time working with that cast. It was the largest by far. It was 107 people, 58 munchkins between 5 and 10 years old, and 6. I thought 63. Oh my goodness. Woo.
Yeah, it was a lot of kids.
Amy worked with the munchkins.
That was a lot of kids.
But yeah, it was a lot of kids, but they all worked so hard, and I absolutely pushed myself to what I thought was the limit. But I think every show I get pushed to a new limit and find new challenges. And I think that's one of the things that I like about theater most and doing this type of work, is that it continues to challenge me and push me to be better in different ways and work outside of my norm. So yeah, I think that was my biggest success,
Awesome.
or
And
my
so
first success.
what's the biggest mistake you think beginning
My
choreographers make? Box
yeah,
steps?
you got to have box steps. Those are something everybody knows and can teach fairly easily. Um, I think my
63
biggest
munchkins? 63 munchkins?
60. I mean, that's not
Dennis
her fault,
Whipple.
though. That's not. That would be the director's fault. or up the chain.
Yeah, I do recall a Dennis Whipple being involved in that conversation. No, I'm just kidding. My biggest beginner mistake is doubting myself. And again, kind of like what Rob was touching on, just being so set in stone that I had every single minute down in my brain. And then when I get in front of folks, they can't do it the way that I envisioned them doing it. So then I have to change it. And then I got frustrated with myself. And so I've learned to not set everything completely in stone, but give myself flexibility and the ability to kind of work with people with where they're at so that they feel comfortable, so that they look good, and so that it fits what we need. And then the end result of that is, we have this amazing vibrance in our actor community, and the energy and the connectivity just explodes. And it's what the audience loves seeing. And then it kind of takes some of that pressure off of me, and it helps the actors come alive and they bring their characters to life.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is amazing. And it took me a couple shows to actually learn to do that, and to be okay with, okay, I didn't finish all of this, but you know what, let's see how this works for everybody else and bring them into their own and bring these characters to
Keep
life.
them all in their own skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Hillary. Miss Vermillion is
Hello.
music director. How would you define music director?
So music directing is really great. We get to bring together the storyline and marry it to this musical idea that really connects us emotionally and mind to mind, from the character to the audience. It's a really cool way to stop in the middle of an action of a show and explore what is frustrating or angry or love or happiness or joy, and we get that moment. And so our job as music director is to rehearse all of the music, make sure that everyone can hit all of the marks, get all the pitches, get all the rhythms, that their diction is really clear, we're still telling a story, and that we can connect with choreography, and we can connect with our characters for direction. And just like Desiree, like you were saying, is, just making sure that we're meeting everyone where they're at, make a beautiful show with the voices that we have in our amazing actors.
I forgot to invite Kevin. That's my fault. So if Kevin, you watch this and you get to this part, I'm sorry. I should have invited you as well. So yeah, well, the pit is a whole other cast down in the floor that deals. That's all music. How did you get started in music directing?
So my background was all in classical music. I played in orchestra, I sang in operas, and in the early 90s, I worked with Sartell High School, and we did Brigadoon. And I was the music director, and I conducted the pit, and it was an amazing experience. And I loved that ability to work with a live show. And so after that, I started working with great theater, and here we are.
Wow. Okay, cool. Can you get him to sing "Run and Get 'em, run and get 'em, run
right.
ye Highland men, or you won't leave"? I can't even do it.
Yeah.
That line is just lost. It's just. Anyway, what was your first success in music?
So I would say probably that show, Brigadoon, was my first success in just being able to be music director, conduct, bring all of those elements together, and just be able to run the shows every night was just so much fun. And then really encouraged me that musical theater might be a beautiful place to land and do some work. So
wonderful. And what's the biggest beginner mistake?
I would think coming from being a singer and wanting to sing the lead roles, forgetting that, you've got to remember that you are a team. And whether you are in the chorus or you're a lead person, you have to work with your team and you need to be a great team player. It works in our directing and our production team. We have to be great team players, and between the cast, they need to be great team players. So we need our community and work together.
Yeah. Need all the body of all those voices.
Yeah.
Get all that harmony stuff together. It is powerful. The Newsies, they had a really nice like core within the Newsies, and they cast some females in with the boy Newsies, which was really good because just voice quality, and it helped round all of that stuff out. It felt really good. So I think I can bring everybody back in now. Gallery view. Ta-da! I think we can start talking over each other a little bit. We're gonna do some production meeting stuff.
You need to call on Aaron. You need to call on Aaron. He didn't tell his story.
No, Aaron. So everybody else, shut up. We're gonna go back to Aaron now. So
that's okay. I was really
should we
enjoying.
do them backwards?
Thanks,
Because we're coming back to you. I'm really sorry. Were you at the top of a page? No, you were just right in the middle, and I'm bad at this.
That's fine. Yeah.
How would you define lighting?
Well, I guess forgettable is really in. No, I think that number one, the role of the lighting designer is a collaborator. I think lighting design is unique because you look at the other elements that put a show on, and they have the ability to create in privacy. If you're a set designer, you're sitting in your studio doing renderings, and you might show a director your 65th rendering of a set design, and they'll never know. As a director, you're able to kind of go through and reconceive shows and think about it. But lighting, you really can't really decide what's going to happen until you're sitting in the theater and you physically turn on a light. So I think that the role of the lighting designer is, number one, a collaborator. You have to be at the forefront of every conversation and be an active team member, so that when you get into the room, you're able to talk to every single individual and do your job efficiently, and also gain the trust of the team around you. They're not doubting you. They know that they're on the same page as you. The other big thing is, I think the job of the lighting designer is you are responsible for what the audience sees. So visibility. The audience is there to see a show. They're there to see their friends. They're there to kind of understand the story that's happening in front of you, and you are responsible for the illumination, the physical ability for the audience to see that cast, that story, and the show in front of them. So I guess the lighting designer is in charge of everything that lights up at the end of the day. Whether it's a scenic element that, like if it's a lantern that's hanging on stage that lights up, or it's someone singing a solo down center, we are the people who are making that visual and actually kind of specifying exactly how those moments happen and the show moves through lighting, through emotion, and all of that.
Excellent. How did you get started in lighting?
I didn't get cast in a production of Tom Sawyer.
Oh, not even a musical.
Okay. So unlike Amy, I didn't have a front porch. I had a bedroom, and my sister and I shared bunk beds, and I was on the top bunk and she was on the bottom bunk. And whenever she wasn't in the room, I would pull my comforter from the top bunk down over the bottom bunk to act as a front curtain. And then I would pull it up from above and play out a scene on the bottom bunk of the bunk bed. That was kind of my very first theater. And from there, like, I went to thumbtacking sheets to my ceiling and using discarded toilet paper rolls or wrapping paper rolls to create sets. I would kind of pretend in my own room and with friends of like what what theater was and what I wanted with it. I was also fortunate to kind of grow up in Northwest Indiana, where we have 10, 12, probably a dozen now, amazing community theaters that really kind of brought me into what is actual theater. My mom pushed me to audition, and I started out as an actor, and I just got bit by the bug. And when I didn't get cast in Tom Sawyer, I kind of knew it. I looked younger than all of the other kids on stage, and we were all supposed to look the same age. And I kind of went to the theater afterwards, and I was like, like, I don't really care about being in the show, being an actor. I really like this place that I can go after school. I like the community that is this theater. I want to be here. So they put me in touch with an incredible woman named Marcia Burbage, who was the resident lighting designer. It was Chicago Street Theater, CTG, still operating today. She's still designing. She's absolutely amazing. And she sat me down and we talked through first she told me, take home the script, read it twice. The first time you read a script is the first time you will ever experience the play for the very first time. So remember every single moment you have while reading that script, because you will never get that opportunity ever again. And then she had me read it another time, thinking about lighting, thinking about the production, thinking about how actual theater works, circling words. And she kind of broke it down and taught me exactly what was lighting design. I remember Act 2 of Tom Sawyer is at night, and scene 1 takes place in the living room, or in the kitchen, sorry, and scene 2 takes place in the living room, and they carry a lantern from the kitchen to the living room. And we talked about how does light move? If this lantern is the only thing illuminating this dark room, how do we follow the actors in their journey as they carry the lantern? And kind of just now, what are the basics of lighting and how do we do lighting in theater? She instilled to me. And I think through that opportunity, through designing shows with her, she totally changed the world in how I see it. When the sun is high in the sky, it's a different color temperature than when it's sitting. And it's how we use the lighting in nature to sculpt what's on stage and kind of create the moments that we want it to be. So I mean, it's all Marcia Burbage. She's the one who hooked me, and here we are today.
Big mentors then for people. So
yeah,
we all have to find a mentor. I think that's really important. It's super good.
Can I jump in, Aaron? Were you 7?
Yeah. I think when we did Tom Sawyer, I was 10 years old. I mean, I was young. Maybe I was 12. It's all a wash now, but yeah. I mean, the beauty about community theater is they introduce you to this world of theater at such an early age. They instill trust in you. They treat you like an adult. I mean, to this day, I can speak much better with people who are twice my age than with people my own age group, just because I learned through community theater what it meant when 7 adults as a 10-year-old were standing out on the stoop smoking cigarettes, and I had to communicate with these 40-year-olds and how to have a conversation.
Wonderful. So what was your first success then? If you started at 10, where would you put success?
I think something that everyone has kind of touched on is every show in its own way is a success.
Cheating. That's cheating.
Well, I'll give you a real answer in a second.
Yeah. No, you give your answer. I won't. Sorry.
But I mean, I think there comes a moment in every single show, and even I'm going to push past theater. Every single artist out there puts something up that says, I don't know if what I'm doing is good enough, and I have to prove that I am good enough. And in that journey of doing whatever we're doing, we find a voice, we find a way to say, you know what, this is right. This is exactly what I want to be saying, or the scene needs to be red or green or blue or any other color of Joseph's coat. And it has to, and it's finding that honesty within yourself as an artist to say, I'm not afraid to put this out there and for people to see, and I'm working with people who support me, so let's give this a shot. And all of that kind of really came really true for me for the first time. I did a production of Kiss Me Kate, and it's this, I like, say what you will about Kiss Me Kate, but I think it's an amazing show. It's about, it takes Taming of the Shrew basically and puts it on stage. But and it's, you get this on stage and off stage behind the scenes look at what it takes to put on a show. But Act 2 begins with an amazing number of It's Too Darn Hot. And for me, it was the first time where I really understood what musical theater does and how you can just forget about the entire world and say, we're going to go full throttle and put up a risk and say that the music transports us to a completely different world, different than anything we've established in the show, and here we go. And I was with people, with an amazing company for It's Too Darn Hot, and they pushed me. We flew in electrics. We kind of did some incredible things that I, as a 13, 14-year-old, was terrified of. And something that I really hadn't ever kind of witnessed in theater before. And we went for it. And it was kind of a moment of honesty where I was like, oh, this is what lighting does, because this is how it fits with a show. And this is really everything we try to do here. Like we're telling a story, we're transporting an audience. So like, let's go for it. Let's not ask for reservations and just press the gas pedal and
push
go.
them there. Awesome. So what's the biggest mistake the beginner lighting designer makes?
Rule number one, it's theater. You have to have blue backlight. I think every audience loves to see blue backlight, and you have to go there. It's also visibility, like exactly as you see on Colin's amazingly lit set.
3 lights. 1, 2, 3.
But I think the other big thing is we get so hung up in angles. We sometimes forget that we have to have visibility, and sometimes you do a show where the entire audience is there to see the 65 munchkins on stage, and you have to turn on all of the front lights so that the parents in the audience and the grandparents can see their little kid's face on stage. I think the other big hurdle for me was actually, because I started at 10, 11, 12, was understanding what it meant for me to lose my hobby because it became my career. Theater for me was always something that I used as an escape. It was something that moved beyond. It was, if I had a hard day at school, I knew that I could go to the theater at night and run a show. And it gave me some adventure outside of my everyday life. And when that hobby became my career, I struggled. When you have a bad day doing something you love, it is the worst. And it's finding other outlets that you can find the joy and be reminded of humanity. I mean, something we've not talked about is like, theater is ungodly hours. Like we put in so much time. We sacrifice time away from kids, our partners, our loved ones, everyone around us. The number of weddings that I wish I could have gone to of my best friends that I couldn't because I was stuck in tech or in previews or on a show is countless. And we really have to be with people that support us and kind of speak to, like, kind of carry us through there, because not every day in the theater is amazing. And we have to find ways to make theater something that can pull us through and still something that we love and is worth all the hours.
Awesome. Way to end the segment. I let you ramble a little bit, so
You
I
did.
hope that
I'm so
makes up
sorry. We're now
for forgetting you
49 minutes
to
later.
begin with. So if anybody is not in the YouTube chat yet, get on in there so you can share your art love and ask some questions of some people. Hopefully we get to that actually. But I think we can go to phase 2 here. So now we'll actually Brady Bunch. People can, oh, Desiree's got a friend. So if you want to unmute yourself, we can unmute, because I think this is going to be where people kind of fly in. Next, said, hi, everybody. Say, wave hi to the internet. You're on the internet. Yeah, and I wanted to kind of set this into what would be our first production meeting kind of style, where we're going to talk about design ideas and direction for Mamma Mia. Okay, so let's put up, we have the Mamma Mia logo that Lacey's in the chat right now too. She designed this wonderful logo for Mamma Mia. Ooh, so very disco. So that's what you're going to be seeing on posters coming up next year. And so yes, Amy, what is your design show? Like, how do you envision the show? What does it mean to you? What does it say?
Thanks, Colin. I think for all of us, what Aaron said really resonates. I keep track. I've got my little scripts here. I have multiple scripts of Mamma Mia, but I keep track. This is my favorite one. This is one that has the most love. Keep track. I keep track of how many times I read through the script, the full script from start to finish. You read through a script several times. You imagine so many different aspects of the story, just like Aaron was beautifully saying. And then the other thing that I do is every single show that I have, I keep a journal. This started when I was in college, and I did get an acting part one time. That was good. But you keep a journal, and it's any little thought, it's any little idea that crosses your mind at any time. And for me, I'm very much what's it called? Help me. Like, I have to write it out. I can't type it. I have to write it out.
Yeah.
And so I capture sort of all of these little ideas and these thoughts, these feelings about a story, especially as the sort of guiding light, the storyteller person who's sort of leading and collaborating and listening to everybody. You want to make sure that you know the full story and that you have a real good sense of what you're doing. So that's like step 1. And then step 2 is a vision meeting, where you gather together and you chat about what are your ideas. And maybe your ideas are fluid, a little bit more fluid, or maybe your ideas about some things are very concrete. Every story is a little bit different. Our first vision meeting, I will remind team, our first vision meeting for Mamma Mia was almost a year ago. Amazing, right? And so a lot can change between that moment where you first say, hey, I'm thinking about mirror balls, and then you get into the fall and you're like, no, I'm thinking about arches, and then you get into December and you're like, Christmas trees, wait. And so that can be sort of the evolution of the process. It is a lot of beautiful conversations with artists. That is the joy of this task. And so I would say that Robert and Sarah Beth in costumes and I started with a lot of conversations about ideas, moods, themes, locations, places. That's where it kind of starts. And then one idea builds and builds and builds. Robert, I'm going to toss it to him so that he can share in on this, but Robert does this amazing thing where he sends you probably 100 different images to pick from. Like, Amy, here are 80 shutters. Which of the shutters do you love the most?
You want?
Yeah, which color blue? Which color of gray white are you interested in? And that part of the process can be such a fun, dynamic conversation. I often think too that the artists that we get to work with, that we all come to the table with wonderful ideas, and that part of the job of a director is to listen to those ideas and to share and celebrate. Hey, I have this great idea. I always want to hear that. I always want to hear that, because maybe your idea just will take our show up, to the moon. And so, Robert, I'm going to toss it to you. You can go from what I started with and share your stuff about how we process.
Yeah, we could do that. Thanks, Amy. Hey, I'm going to try to share my screen here, and then
give that a shot. Let's see. Hopefully it doesn't.
I'll bring up some research images that Amy was talking about. This is kind of like the process where we start with everything here, and I'm going to do that. There we go. Let me know if it's up, Colin. Should be able to see my screen now.
Yeah, it worked. It worked.
Hey.
Cool.
So this is, if you could see it full screen, but this is sort of like a research board that I always throw in like the original production, past productions, tours, whatever. So we can kind of see a basis of where it had started, how it originated. And then you take a director's concept and you take it from there. I mean, one thing is like when you actually see like how we collaborated and came to where we settled, which you'll see here in a minute, doesn't really, it looks similar in sense of like, hey, we're in the Mediterranean Sea on an island and in the Aegean, to where you have these turquoise blue shutters and that like a particular location that we have to define. And that's kind of what you see here. So these are past productions. And then we go through here. Hey, let's take a look at movie shots, see what exciting stuff they did there as well. And then here's basically our island, our Greek islands, the Aegean islands. And this is, as you can see, this is the location of where our show Mamma Mia takes place. You see lots of blues, you see lots of whites. I mean, the images are just beautiful. And then we narrow these down and Amy picks, and actually, I didn't say just Amy, everyone pretty much comments, everyone from Dennis, even Colin jumped in, Aaron as well. And we just say, hey, kind of like what we like. And we go with a theme here, if that makes sense, picking on like what items we like here. And then this is the research board. Like you'll see here, where if you can see my cursor, these two images were kind of like a lot of people said on these. This like blue, this lattice look that we have. And then you can see where I'm circling. I'm hoping you can. Sort of like this white stone mixed. And then over here, you'll see this type of stone. But so the idea was, how do we do this without having a pure white set, which, as Aaron pointed out in our midst of our conversation, would be really, really not hard to do. It's just a different approach with lighting, but at the same time, costumes and whatnot with the lighting instrumentations we have at the Great, to go with, hey, how can we define these stones, but still keep it in that grayish, like that cooler tones, but actually have a little bit of white that screams the Aegean where we are with that. And again, here's like cobblestones where we talked about like what the floor should look like. We talked about like these different levels, like, hey, can we have like a little railing here so we could sit on, have like a perch to have a like conversation pit type of thing. And all of a sudden now it gives us a reason for Amy to bring action and choreography down to one area of the stage or back and play the stage basically. So it's just not like, I don't know how to say it, just randomless blocking without anything being grounded, and the scenic pieces and lighting and costumes help ground those actors to a particular area. It gives them a motivation and a reason for heading down left, down right, upstage center to a table, whatnot, with that within our music. And then we like these little hallways, which we created a lot of corridors and whatnot in it. Here, beams, more images here as well, stones of like interior shots that we could do with that. These are all the different locations because we have a pier shot in the show as well, a little dock, I should say, but these were like little island bar areas on the Greek islands too, with that. And this is the wedding, just some ideas from a terrace and flowers, chairs, picking if the audience was the audience part of the wedding, is the audience being part of the reception part of it, or vice versa, deciding like which direction to play the wedding and whatnot on. Shutters, these are the ones we kind of narrowed it down to, types of mailboxes and lights.
We'll be making some of those candle holders.
Yeah, like we're gonna. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. We're gonna make these, which is awesome. So yeah, and that's kind of our research photos where we ended up with that. And I think if I'm still sharing here, let me see if I can bring up. I think it'll pop up. Let's see here. Can you guys see that or no?
Shutters still.
Okay, hold on. That's all right. I must share one program at a time. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to go back and then share the video. Awesome. There we go. Yep. Cool. Do you guys see the video? I'll make it bigger. So this was, and I have two of these, so we could show two versions of this, but this is kind of where we ended up. And this is where I was talking about, like, you could see the white stone, but a little bit of that gray in texture. We talked about having a home area up here for the band and actually filling the orchestra pit. If you can see my mouse move. So we actually lowered the orchestra pit to have two different layers. And that was a lot of conversation with just Aaron being able to light this, because I mean, anybody who goes to our theater realizes that it's kind of a dead spot down there. To utilize that takes some really clever lighting and being able to really put those positions in from the start and realize that, hey, they're going to be here. They're going to be part of the scene, be part of the show, and how to incorporate them. If not, actors are pretty much going to be dark, walking down to that area. So I'm just going to play it here and you guys can watch it. But this is kind of like where we ended up. And you can see, let me pause it here. And you can see little archways right behind Colin right now.
That's right back
upstage
behind me.
left. Yeah, if you can see him there in the video. And then the windows and staircases that would go up here. And then they had behind these windows were like little hitting levels and staircases. So we could open the shutters for the nightmare scene and do all that stuff to make it very look practical. And then when we started the show, the whole idea was that it was being run down. So like the plants were kind of dying. We talked about doing that with vines. And then throughout the show, Amy was in choreography would, start adding a little bit of color, like they're preparing for the wedding, if that makes sense, over time. So the place would be a little from disarray to more like, hey, still not a lot of money, but we're doing something for a wedding, if that makes sense. You can see the water down front. Tried to show the speaker locations from like our worst seat in the house so we could look for sight lines and whatnot. And then we'd have the band up top here where you see the terrace, and we'd have a bunch of swag lights along with flying pieces that would come in. So this gives you kind of an idea of the direction where we went and the levels where Colin was standing were.
I think too, Robert, if I could add and just jump in and say that this beautiful set with all of the staircases and open and closing doors and shutters and levels and different things, it isn't just for the purpose of making an interesting stage picture. It is in direct support of our story. Mm-hmm. We have many different relationships that are being played out here on this island. We have Donna's relationship with her daughter. We have Donna's relationship with her lovers. We have Donna's relationship with her friends, her daughter's relationship with her lover, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on. And so when you think about the world of a story and you imagine, where do all these people live? How do they all fit in together? A set like this really speaks to that theme, I think. And so like the scenic design really does support the storytelling that we're doing. It isn't just Robert didn't add 7 amazing doors just because it would be fun.
Just for fun.
It's intentional, and it has a purpose. And so that's part of the joy of this too. A totally different story would have a totally different set. So I just wanted to say that.
I think also with that, the interesting thing about Mamma Mia is that there's 3 men that are strangers that come back to this island. They have a history with Donna, but how can we then create different ways for them to run into her or for her to hide from them? And so I think a lot of our conversations were also, what are the cubby holes that Donna can watch a scene happening but not be seen, versus them watching Donna, or kind of what is public versus not public in this kind of show where everyone is stuck in the same location for a period of time.
Oh my God, so true. We were just getting there, like all in our staging, because all of these balconies have this wonderful, and all these little doorways have these wonderful effects of being able to have little spies, like who hears what when, right? Who plays up here while some interesting thing is happening down of the stairs. Like there was just some real playfulness that we were just getting to, that we will get back to. It's so fun. So fun.
It was interesting to learn how many of these doors needed to be practical. I know, Robert, you had started with maybe the stage right door that's kind of going off stage, and we made it practical. And making sure like every upper window we could get to almost was openable. You can have munchkin moments almost pop out.
And it's great. I mean, think about it, for the Domino song and all those. I mean, it's just, the windows popping open. It's like, Mamma Mia, I mean, it's just fun. It's just,
It will be good. So lights, we're dealing with a very white set. What does that say to you? Like what is your input then on top of this
I remember
set?
the first meeting. Can I say this? Can I just briefly say this?
Go
I
for it.
remember the first vision meeting. I was like, Aaron, I know you probably have strong feelings about white. And then all of a sudden Aaron was like, no, I think white's wonderful. It was this whole new thing. It was this whole new thing. Now you go.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing. I think that if from the get-go you decide we're going to have an all-white show, you then plan for that show. The worst nightmare that you have as a lighting designer, I think, is that you think that you're going to have a really high contrast set and walk into the theater and it's all one color white, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't plan for this. Because remember, like much like life, lighting a show is all about contrast. How do you make the performers pop out from the scenery that is around them? When I look at a show, like the way a set moves is really great for creating the world of the play. And the costumes are really really dressing, if you will, the each character's mannerisms and who they are. But lighting and sound, and if you get their projection and video design, really are the only elements at a second can change with the world. So you really have to then create, like for Mamma Mia, we were like, how do we take this beautiful kind of Greek island and transport it into kind of the world of ABBA? And when does the music come to life? And you have sequences in the club and in I mean, the Megamix is a whole different story that you'll see probably in September when we get it on stage. But you have moments where you want to create this really high color world. And so when you're dealing with an all white set, it's knowing when to bring in color and not using color to spoil the surprise later. So I think that when I was kind of going at this, I was like, how can we create tones? And Robert is like really good about creating a lot of different pigments. There's a difference between an all white set and a set like this that has color broken up. And I remember like Robert and I had a conversation where it's like, I know that we're walking into 1 week of tech and I'm not going to be able to really treat this with the pristine manner of a complete flat white wall. We're just like, there is a given circumstance of the production timeline and I can't do this. So if you could please break it up as much as possible and give me some sort of texture that I can then bury light in and create a world around. And he responded with all of this incredible brick. And Great has had amazing scenic artistry on their staff that are able to really kind of create this. And so it's knowing where to bury light and when to kind of identify when the set is going to be seen. I think the other side of all of this is Amy and I had a lot of conversations where I kind of pushed her to say, hey, I need you to have a scene far down left or just on the stairway, because if we sit for 2.5 hours just looking at this full set, we're going to get really bored of it. And the way a show moves is you want to be able to really kind of suck into those moments of isolation so that when we light up the full stage again, we're reminded, oh yeah, this is a really exciting set, or this is a really exciting scene. So it's more than just lighting with a light set. It's having coordination of choreography and the director being willing to say, okay, well, we're going to spend this 3-minute scene on the balcony. They'll cross down to the stairway, but they're not going to come to the main level because as soon as we hit the main level, we're going to have to bring up light that suddenly lights all the walls, and that's just way too much. So it's like that's where it really goes into the collaboration of all facets of how a show moves and how all the pieces come together, so that once we get into the theater, we're not like, oh my gosh, nothing we planned on works.
Amy, how do you hold all of those things in your head? So like, I'm sure you're pulling
No,
like
I don't.
blocking, and I want to
don't.
move things around, and I want to try to use everything. But like, if Lights is saying, try to do this, do you have that in your journal, or that?
That is in script number 2. That's where that is. So you come prepared, right? Like the great thing about working with this team is that all of them are very playful. And so we play. So we go into the rehearsal hall. Sometimes what you envision at your dining room table and that you've got all written out perfectly does not fit. And it's that what Amanda was touching on earlier. We all write in pencil. And we get into the space and we're like, oh, okay, nope, we got to switch it out because we need to do, this character needs to enter from here instead because of the picture. We're trying to keep track. Is it door A, B, or C, D? No, how many doors do we have? A, B, C, D, E, and F, I think, plus the VOM. But yeah, so we keep track of, I keep track of all of those things. Lots of sticky notes, lots of notes. But then the big part is once
Can I stop you real quick? Can we have Desiree talk about choreography because she needs to run? I'm really sorry. I know I sent you on that tangent. So, Desiree,
That's cool.
please. What have you seen? What have you put together for us in Mamma Mia?
Well, the cast worked so hard. I think we got about halfway through the numbers I was working on choreographing, and some really big numbers, Voulez-Vous, Mamma Mia, and just finding different ways to okay, so I have to bring it back to Amy and her vision and then my vision of things. And she puts together this awesome document that is choreo notes. And she's broken down every song and every scene and provides me with her vision of what she sees. So I align that with what I've got going on in my brain. And sometimes we collaborate and change it completely, or we develop it further. There's some pieces that I really enjoy where we tag team doing choreography, where it's like, okay, I need you to help with the blocking in the middle of the song. And what do you think about this? Where should we move this? And so this is a part of that, where I was talking about earlier, not allowing yourself to get discouraged about having a finished product, because having that flexibility to really change it, manipulate it is amazing. And I really like the set too. I'm actually, the picture that's up right now is not one that I've seen before. And something,
The
there's
paint
a little
renderings.
space
They're
right there.
Basecamp. They're all Basecamp. What we try to use to organize people's website, Basecamp.
Yeah. And, this might be one that I just missed because I was looking at more,
You might not have gotten clicked on. It's kind of.
yeah, full set pictures, where I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I fit 30 something people onto the stage and into this space in a meaningful way, and utilize different levels, and how do I create, in some of the songs there are multiple conversations going on, so how do I make it seem like these conversations are happening in different rooms, so creating a pathway between bodies to go down what seems to be a hallway that's lit by this amazing lighting, to have these conversations. And that is all coordinated with the director and working with the lighting designer, so that we actually record the dances as they are taught, so Aaron has the opportunity to see what we're working on, and that helps him figure out what he's going to do with his lighting. So it really is a group effort and coming together, and I love seeing the set come together. It really just changed my whole perception initially, when you're just looking at the script or just contemplating, okay, what am I going to do for this show? It all just starts to come to life. And having
Is there a style, or is there certain things that you've chosen within this show that really say ABBA to you, or Mamma Mia, or Greek, or like
the dolphin?
I wish I had room in here. I don't quite have enough room in here. Amy sent me quite a few different ideas, so I spent a lot of time watching Soul Train episodes on YouTube.
Yeah.
I watched the Supremes videos so that I could figure out some stuff that I could coordinate for Donna and her besties as they're singing along. I watched some Bruno Mars and just Madonna, a lot of different things to get some inspiration. And yeah, just trying to think outside of the box and what would make some of these pieces like Voulez-Vous, for instance, a lot of partner dancing. How can we bring partners together? And then thinking about our cast, we've got all sorts of age ranges of individuals. And Voulez-Vous is a passionate song. It's very hot. It can be fairly sexual. So how do we communicate that? How do we not lose the passion of that piece, but then also make everybody who is on stage feel comfortable and confident in who they are and in bringing their character to life. So it's been a lot of fun, actually. Our cast is amazing, and just seeing them bring all these pieces together has been outstanding. I must say I miss everyone dearly since we're not in rehearsal right now, but it has been a really good experience.
Well, thank you, Desiree. Thank you for being here tonight. If you got to run,
yeah,
if
sure.
anybody else
Thanks,
has to
everybody.
run, I know we're getting a little later at this point.
Have a good night, guys. Yep.
So,
Bye.
Want to give Hillary some time? I know we have lights and directing, but we can come back into our talks. So, Hillary, Columbia Music. What would you say? Are you just trying to teach what's on the page, or do you try to push it farther because it's ABBA? Like, are we rounding people in a certain way? Are we
Right. So I grew up listening to ABBA, which is hilarious that now there are kids that are like the age I was when I first started hearing it, like a young kid, and all of a sudden these kids know this music. It's so crazy. So yeah, so we've got a script. It's your skeleton. You got to like follow what's on the script.